Alright, so we're up to part 3 of the introduction to digital audio production. So I'm just going to pick up where we left off. Let's have a listen to how this tune's sounding at the moment. That's all good. I'm going to work a little bit more on the bass line. At the moment it's still a little bit simple for me as far as the actual sound goes. Also, I think the phrase could be a wee bit longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything that I've done in this loop. So I'm going to click up on the top left, hold down the shift key, click down the bottom right down on the master track, and you see that's selected everything in this project. And I'm going to push Command D or Control D on a PC, which is going to duplicate that. So now I have 8 bars. So it's just going to repeat that initial loop that I've done over and over again. And the reason I do that is because I think this little phrase here in the bass line, I reckon that should only be at the end. That's kind of the finishing little roundup of the whole bass loop. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this section here. Let's have a listen and see what we can do. So let's open this up and let's bring these notes down. We'll put them all on G for now. Down, 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 down. Let's solo it. Maybe you might extend a few of these notes out like this, just to give it a bit of a nice syncopation feel. Put that down to an F. Delete those. Drag this out. Remember, hold down the Command key to drag a note without snapping it to the grid. That's cool. So remember, I need to copy this down by holding down the Option key down onto the sub bass track as well, just so that the sub bass matches what the high bass is doing. Let's solo that as well. Let's have a listen. Pretty cool. Let's change this bit here. I'm going to introduce you to the triplet function. So I'm going to open up this clip. It's these 3 notes here. I think I want them to go in a triplet feeling. So instead of being static, let's click here and play for us. If I right click on the grid, you see how the fixed grid is set to 1/16. So that's all of these little grid markers here. They're set to 1/16 notes. If I choose triplet grid, well, you see it's the Command key in 3. Notice how all the grids changed. It's changed into a triplet pattern. Now if I zoom in and have a look, now these notes aren't actually fixed to the grid, but we want them to be fixed to the grid in a triplet fashion. So I'm going to drag that across so it snaps. I'm going to delete that one and drag that one back. So now this is going to go, and we'll listen to that in contrast to the rest. We'll put one more note up here. And we'll just copy those 3 and drag them down here. So these 6 notes are going to be in a triplet. Everything else is matched to 16. It just kind of stutters it up a bit, and it's a good way to just finish a little phrase, because then when this kicks back in again, it's all back into 16th notes. Again, remember, we need to copy this and drag it down so the sub does the same thing. So that's cool. Also, I think this part here, I don't really want to copy what's happening here. It'd be good to give it a little bit of contrast. So let's open it up. Let's drag this down to G, and we'll go up the scale like this. See how that sounds? Up one more. Maybe we need to copy this down into the sub again. cool. And this long note here, it'd be cool to change the filter a little bit. So remember, this is the automation line of the analog frequency 1, frequency of the first filter. So I'm going to command delete, which deletes the envelope. And let's just move this up and down. You know, this is the cutoff point. Let's make it go wow wow wow. See if we can see what we can get going on here. Let's give it a bit of a wobble. Let's drag that note longer, so it's nearly touching the one after it. Okay, another cool thing we can do here is that long note. I reckon we should pitch bend it a little bit. So change the note so it kind of sways off its current pitch. And we do that by opening up the envelopes menu in the clip view. So remember, we've double clicked this. Here are all our notes in the piano roll, but if we click on this little E down the bottom corner, we get the envelopes menu. Now this is where we can change, it's kind of the same as these parameters here in these automation lines, except we get to change them within the clip view. So if we look at these drop down menus here, we can see we can select the instrument on the channel, so we've got the analog. And if we click it here, here's all the different things that we can change. So we can change any one of the parameters in here. But for now, what I want to do is I want to change the pitch of the note. And you see we've got the three main parameters which we control here. One of these being the pitch bend. So we click this and we get this line in the middle. So that means the pitch bend is actually at 0. So if we go here. So if I make a point here, make sure it's on 0. 0. Make another point here, make sure it's on 0. If I make a middle point and drag it up, that note's going to bend up and down. That's cool. But see, I've dragged that to the top, the very, very top. And it's only pitch bending up 2 semitones. Let's say I want this pitch to go up quite high. Let's say I want it to go up an octave. So this note, it'll go up to the whole octave, right up to the top, and then down back to the original octave. The way I do that is I need to go into the actual synthesizer, which is the analog, and I need to change the, where are we? The pitch bend range. Now this is available to if you click on the volume part of the analog. You see if we click around on the analog, we get the middle section changes to things that we can change with that various things. So there's the oscillator, filter, amplitude, envelope, LFO. But the volume is usually where the core pitch bend things are kept. For example, the pitch bend range, we've got the voices, and that kind of thing. So let's change the pitch bend range. Let's click on it. Let's drag it up to 12. So now 12 semitones, and 12 semitones is an octave. An octave has 12 semitones. So you can think G, G sharp A sharp B, C, C sharp D, D sharp E, F, F sharp G. So there's 12 of those, and it goes up the scale. In a Western scale, there are 12 semitones in an octave. So let's have a listen to see how that sounds. That's quite cool. Remember, we need to copy this down into the sub as well, and we also need to go into the sub bass, and we need to change the pitch bend as well for the sub, because otherwise the sub bass is going to only go up 2 semitones, and the high bass is going to go up 12, but we want them both to go up 12. Let's have a listen now. That's cool, but now I want to change this cutoff. It doesn't sound quite right, so. That's cool. But I thought, oh, okay, let's, here's our note here. Let's try something fun. Let's drag this back here. And let's turn the triplet grid on again, and let's add in some triplet notes here. 1, 2, 3, like that. I'm just going to drag this a little bit back so it's not hard up against the first triplet one. So remember how we did the triplets before, and it kind of takes things slightly out of sync with the rest of everything else. we want this first note of the triplet to be quite prominent, so let's add in a point here of the filter and bring this up. Cool, and copy it down into the bass once again. Awesome. So that's I quite like that for the phrasing of the bass line. Quite cool. That little triplet bit there, it's quite cool. Very cool. But the bass is cool. It's just the sound is quite I don't know. It's the same sound throughout the whole thing. The same bass line is the same sound as doing the whole bass line. So let's try something. Let's duplicate this high bass line by selecting the track and pushing Command or Control D. So now I have two copies of this bass line. I'll just lower this down so we can see. So we've got high bass and high bass. Let's rename the one that we've just duplicated to high bass 2, and we'll solo it. So it's exactly the same as the first one. And here's the first one. So exactly the same. But now what we can do is we can open up this high bass, open up the analog, and let's muck with the sound of the synthesizer to try and get a different sound. First thing I'm going to do, let's change the shape to a saw wave. Remember, we're working on high bass 2 here, not the original one. That's pretty cool. Let's add in a second oscillator. So we had the first oscillator, which is the core machine which is generating the waveform. We add in a second one. We have two going at once, and they're fighting for each other, and they're with each other, or they're working together, and they're creating a new wave shape by combining two shapes. So let's turn the second one on. Now, because we've got two saw waves, they're both exactly the same octave, they're both the same semitone, and there's no detuning. It's basically playing the same wave shape together, which gives a kind of a phasing effect. It's not that cool. Let's change it to a square. So we've got a square wave here, and we've got a saw wave here. Bringing the resonance down a little bit. Oops, that was on the wrong bass line. Let's try two square waves. And let's detune them a little bit. Detuning is just changing the pitch slightly, so they're slightly out of tune. Let's change the saws. Quite like that. Let's play with the EQ a little bit, try and bring out some different frequencies. And we'll go over to the filter delay. Remember, we use this unit to spread the sound out spatially to give it a bit more stereo width. Let's change that a bit so it's different than the first one. And let's add something else. Let's really muck with it. So we're going to go into our live devices, and we'll choose a Redux. Is always fun to play with. So a Redux reduces the bit rate of the sound. We can, with your downsample here, we can either use it in hard or soft mode. Hard mode really changes it. Quite cool. Soft does it quite at a much lighter rate. I'm going to put the Redux before the filter delay. And I think this would sound good with a very slight reverb over it. So a reverb being an instrument which creates or kind of emulates a large hall or a canyon or that kind of thing. It takes the sound, delays it lots and lots and lots of times, so you get this kind of... so I'm going to bring the dry wet value down, which is how much of the reverb is actually being applied to the sound. If it's 100%, all we hear is the reverb. So right, if we bring the dry wet down to, let's say, 26, about there. Now, what we can do here is we can change the size of the reverb, which will change how big the presence is, and also how long the reverb takes to die. So at the moment it's at 1.2 seconds. So if I bring the size right down, so we're in a very confined space, you get this kind of real machine type sound. Let's bring the decay time down a bit. So this is the original. That's cool. What I might do is I might add a redux to this first bass line as well, just to give it a bit more feeling as well. So I'm going to put it in soft mode. Let's listen to them together for a sec. So now we've got two of them. We can do some interesting things. What I like to do is I like to pick and mix the notes around. We can do this by going in here, and so here's our first bass line, here's our second bass line. Let's say we want the first two notes to be played on the first bass line, so we'll just go into the second bass line, select the first two notes and delete them. But we want this third note to be played by the second bass line, so let's delete this third note in the first bass line and delete it. So I'm kind of picking and mixing. Delete that one there. Let's just go like this, and so I'm just letting one note from each bass line play. Let's leave it on this one. I think I like that one. Actually, what we could do here is we could leave these both together because it sounds quite good. But we can actually play around with the redux a little bit here. So if I click on the redux, you see how now we've got this automation line which controls the redux. So as I move the redux up and down, you see how the line moves up and down, and also if I click on the line and move up and down, the redux knob moves up and down. So these two things are corresponding, which is good because we could draw some patterns in here. So let's say we want this phrase when it goes down. Let's say we want the redux on this side. I'm adding in points on the redux. It gets really, really gnarly, so I'll bring it right up to the max. And let's do the same on the high bass as well. Here's our redux. Let's click on the downsample rate, and we get our line. You see how it says redux here, and then sample soft here, so we can make sure that line works. Yep, we move it, and they both work. Let's double click here, and do exactly the same. See what happens. How about we make this one go from really hard to really soft? And just to be fun, let's pan these so they kind of go out. One goes off to the left, one goes off to the right. If we look over here next to the volume slider, you see we've got this one which says C, which stands for center. This is your pan. And again, notice we've got a red line which corresponds to that. So if we leave that on C, if I double click here, and double click here. So this is currently playing in the center field. But if I put another point and drag this up, now I've dragged that to 50 right, which is hard pan to the right. So as this goes down, as the redux goes down, it's going to pan to the right. Let's do it on this one as well. So C, boom, boom, and let's pan this one hard to the left. Don't know if this will sound alright, but we'll have a go. Need to solo it first. cool. Let's listen with the kick and stuff. Right, so I'm just listening to that now. At this point here, I reckon we could do with a new bass sound again, something really low and dominating, like a big strong hit. Boom, here. So, what we can do is let's insert a new MIDI track. We'll drag it down below high bass 2, and we'll call it high bass 3. So, I'm kind of layering up various synthesizers to make a single bass line sound more interesting here. It's a process I use quite a lot, and it can be a lot of fun. It's like really designery. So here, so let's delete. So I've just clicked and dragged these two here. We can delete them, we don't need them. This is where our note's going to be. So I'm going to add in a MIDI clip. Double click it. And we're going to stick with a G. Let's go with G1. Alright, so we've got no instrument loaded up there at the moment. Let's go in and let's try working from an operator preset. That's always fun. Actually, no. Let's use the oh no, let's use operator. That's fun. So we'll go synth bass and we'll have a listen to see what the presets sound like. It's all right. So I'm just dragging these presets down. Something really powerful. Too much. It'd be quite cool. Let's drag this note out, see how it sounds like. No, I don't like that. I'm going to turn off the bongos because they're slightly distracting me. Turning off the mute. I think I might go back to the analog. We'll stick with the analog for now. Make our own sounds. A bit more fun. Drag it down. So the oscillator is a bit too high. Let's drag it down to 1. Turn it into a square. Turn the filter on. Give it some envelope. So I'm dragging around with the attack, decay, sustain, release. So this is the decay point here, which I'm moving up and down, and this is the sustain point. So if I turn the filter down as low as it can go, it's going to start. The frequency is going to start high and then snap down to the sustain point at the rate of the decay time. we'll add in an EQ8. Bring up some resonance on the filter. It's quite good. We'll take the bass off by selecting the first pole and turning it into a high pass filter. We put a redux on there. And let's put a saturator on it, see if we can give it some drive. So I'm just moving, I've just loaded up the saturator and giving it a bit of drive here. Maybe give it a bit of colour. Change it to, I'm just mucking around here trying to find a good sound. See how that snare kind of dominates when that bass line is playing? So I'm going to try moving it across here just to see how this sounds. I kind of like that. Let's go back and change the envelope a little bit more on this filter. Let's change it to a saw wave. Now we need to add that note into the sub bass as well. So let's scroll down. Going to select this area, going to Command E. So I created a new little MIDI clip where this one is. Oh, we could just drag this down actually. Let's drag that down like that. See how it's an octave too high though, so we need to open it up. Open it up, make sure note view is selected. Pick the note and push down 12 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Because remember 12 semitones is an octave. And so now that note is... That's cool. I'm going to leave that there for now, and let's go back and just remember how we were cutting out and adding in notes before. I'm going to go back and do that here. So let's take that one, and that one. Take these two out. That one and that one. Let's just take out like this. So I'm just kind of doing it systematically here. You can do it to your own tastes, but this just seems to be working. Let's go those three there and those three there like that. Let's change the downsample rate on these three notes here. Now I'm just going to select that and drag it up so that just this note has a different sample downsample rate than the other. We'll do the same for this one down here. Where is our redux here? Too much. Cool, and we'll just go back to cutting these out. I'll do it quite quickly. Let's go 1, 2, 3. Ooh, what are we going to do here? Let's change the down sample with the cutoff, would be quite cool. Let's go change the down sample of the second bass line. Leave them working together for this. It's quite a powerful note. Let's try something slightly fun here. We've got the filter delay of the high bass too, and this was used to give it space. We did this by having the left side on 1 millisecond, the right side on 7 milliseconds. I'm going to change this time on this note to see how it sounds. So I've clicked on the 7.24 milliseconds and it's given us the corresponding line here. Oops, let's double click, insert a point. Let's double click to insert a point here. And let's drag this up, see what happens. Might sound like shit, probably will actually. Yep, that sounds like shit. Anyway, worth a try. So this triplet, these triplet notes here, I reckon this third one would be a good place to put that big powerful note that we had before. So I've deleted it. If we scroll back, here's our note. Let's copy it. Let's go down to where we deleted those triplets from here. Okay, we'll paste it here. Paste it here. How are we gonna do this now? We'll paste it here. Change the length to yep. So half a bar. Drag it out. So now we can pick this note, we can drag it across, make sure the triplet grid is on. Let's drag it across to narrow it down a bit to here, so that's where we want it. Cool, and then let's pick and mix this again. Pick and mix, what kind of saying is that? I don't know. Let's change the redux value here as well. Let's change it for each 4. So I've selected those 4, make sure the redux automation line is selected by clicking on the knob. Selected those 4, let's drag it up a bit. And, let's drag it up quite a bit. And then we'll select these 4 and drag it up about here. See how it creates separate marker points if we select an area before we drag the line? Drag down here. We'll do the same on this one. Down sample. Go high, medium, yeah, and yeah. And let's go with the cutting out various notes. Let's let the top one do the first 2 notes. So I'm deleting the second 2 out of each lot of these 4, and we'll let the bottom one do the second 2 notes. Be interesting. Alright, let's have a listen to that. So it's looking quite busy now, it's good. Because this high bass has a it only plays this high bass 3 only plays twice in this whole phrase. Let's give it a really long reverb just to see how it sounds. So I've added a reverb, bring the dry wet down, bring the decay time up lots, and we'll turn off the high cut. This is like a little filter, so you can say, okay, I only want the reverb to apply to the highs, I only want the reverb to apply to the lows. You can turn one of these off, or you can turn them both off, and we want them both off. We want the whole thing to reverberate. Let's have a listen. It's pretty cool. Let's make the decay time even more. Let's bring the dry. Let's make it so the dry wet starts off slowly, and then right after the notes finish playing, it comes up quite quickly, like that. So the note's going to hit and the dry wet's going to be low, so the reverb isn't going to be too present. And then as soon as the note is actually finished, the reverb will come up, even down a bit lower. That's cool. Let's copy that. Oh no, so we're going to click on this little plus symbol to branch out an extra little automation track for this reverb dry wet here. So see, it's copied what we had before. Oops. Redo. So now I can select this automation on the reverb dry wet. I can copy it. We can go down here and we can paste it. So it's going to happen on the second one as well. Let's just make this smooth like this so it doesn't cut it. We also need to ensure that we raise the tail up here as well, so that when it finishes here and loops back, it doesn't suddenly cut the reverb. And we just need to smooth this down. This is just so the reverb dies away rather than slowly stops. That should do. Alright. Give it a bit of a pumping feeling. Let's do the classic add in a compressor on the same channel after the reverb. We're going to turn the sidechaining on by clicking on this little triangle, clicking on sidechain. It's asking us, where do we want the sidechain input to come from? So where do you want me to receive information from to affect how this compressor works? So if we go audio from, we want it to come from, let's go from the kick just to be standard. So now if we look, see how the threshold has a level which is going with the kick? So if I bring the threshold down, what it's going to do is it's going to compress the audio every time the kick hits, which gives it that pumping feeling. So I've gone down to the open hi-hats. Let's just unmute the open hi-hats. We had them muted. See how that sounds? Bring in the bongos again. Very cool. I like that very much. Right. So now let's okay, you see what's happened here is I think what's happened is it's detuned one of the oscillators because we've stopped it when it was mid pitch bend, which would be this big note here. So see how it sounds out of tune? If we play it here. Yeah, so this pitch bend here, this is a problem that you can come into sometimes. If it pitches up to here and then you stop the music, then the oscillators are going to stay where it was last pitch bent. It needs to have this information to go back to the original to reset it. It can be a bit of a trap sometime. So I'm quite happy with that bass line for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save my project. Oh, I have to save it as a new version. Introduction to Digi, right, save, replace. And I'm going to now save this as a new one called Introduction to Digi dash bass resampled. Sampled? Can't spell. That's because I'm going to now resample this bass line, all four of these bass lines, down into one separate audio track. A, because we can save CPU space because we're going to start working with some more synths. And B, it's kind of fun to chop it up once it's a sample because you come up with a whole new way of producing. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to introduce a new audio track. So let's click on sub bass because we want the audio track to go below it. So I push Command T. You can also go. Computer's just thinking about something. Okay. So, or you can also go create insert audio track. This audio track is where I'm going to resample the bass. So I'm going to call this, rename it bass resampled. So this is just a blank audio track. What we can do is we can now send the output of these four bass lines to that audio track. At the moment, these four bass lines, they're all going straight out to the master. We want them to go through this bass resample track before they hit the master. And the way we do that is by this drop-down menu here. This is kind of the routing menu of the tracks. And you see we've got the drop-down one at the bottom which says master. So that means the output is going to the master. But we can choose to send this to a new track. And if we click down, we see we've got a new bass resampled audio track. This drop-down menu will list all the audio tracks that you have in your project. We've only got one at the moment, which is bass resampled. So let's send that to bass resampled. Bass resampled. I'm doing it for all four of them. Bass resampled and bass resampled. So now everything's going to go through this bass resample track. But we have silence because we need to turn this on to in. So we need to turn this on to in, so it's actually listening. So all four of those bass lines are going through this bass resample. And if we look here, we can see it's kind of clipping a little bit. It's going up into the orange. We don't want that to happen because we're going to resample it down, and that would distort the waveform. So let's look at the levels. So we can see both of these bass tracks going into the red a little bit. We could bring the volume down, but I think just as a quick fix here, let's. I do this quite a lot. Some people might say it's a bit sloppy, but I don't care. Let's open up our compressor. Oh no, let's use a. Where are we here? A limiter. And let's just put in a fast limiter on the high bass. So it's added in a limiter here. And let's hold down the option key so we can duplicate to high bass 2. So that's keeping it in the green for us. So now if we go back down to the bass resampled, it's still going a little bit into the red. Let's bring the volume down by negative 2. Let's have a look and see if that's still doing it. That'll do us. Doesn't matter too much. So the reason I've done this is now if we go onto the bass resample track and we click record, the track is now armed. It's ready to record what gets fed into it, which is the first 4 bass tracks. So if I click record up here and hit play, Excellent. So we have our entire bass line, all 4 bass lines, in a 8-bar loop resampled. So if I turn this on to auto, so now it's going to actually play the clip in the audio track. It's not going to play the input, it's going to play the clip. And solo it. Cool, so now we have our bass line as a single audio clip, which means we can, you don't have to do this, but I like to do this. It's kind of restricting myself in a way. It's a good way to get really productive. I'm going to select all 4 of those bassline tracks and delete. Just like that. So now we have our bassline resampled like that. And I'm going to save it. Remember, we saved this one as bass resampled, so if we do want to go back and change the bass, and for you guys who want to actually get into the project and have a look at how I did all those bass lines, we have the original there sitting there, which is good. So we can actually open up that old version if we want to change something. But for now, we've got this. Now the reason I've resampled that is, I want to add in some more little, I don't know what you'd call them, little bass sounds, but kind of up in the real high end of the spectrum that kind of complement the bass that we've already got. So we're going to advance on the bass line even more. Probably tell I like to focus a lot on the bass line, but I think it's quite important, especially with a tune like this. So there's our bass resample. Let's add in another MIDI track. So I'm going to select an area of the MIDI track. I'm going to insert a MIDI clip. Oh, make sure it's selected. Insert MIDI clip. And let's open up another analog. Again, you're free to use whatever synths you want. I'm just using analog here because it's a really straightforward one and it's native to Ableton. And I'm just going to open up this clip and I'm just going to chuck in a bunch of notes. Boom, and I'm going to Command D duplicate it. Oops. We'll do it this way. Holding down the Option key. Select all the notes, hold down the Option key, we can drag. So I'm putting one on every 16th note. It's going to sound bad, but... Awesome, let's open up the analog. For a start, the amplitude envelope. See the release time, it's quite long, so that means when the note is finished it's still going to continue playing. We don't want that, we want the note to stop as soon as the note is actually stopped in the piano roll. So if we bring down the release time, all good. Let's take it down an octave. And let's change some of these. I'm just going to randomly length out some notes, make that short. I really am just doing this at random. Put that there, delete that, make them short. Make that a short one. Cool. And I want these to be very, they're not really going to be bass, they're going to be like really high end complementing the bass line. So let's put on an auto filter here. So this is a cutoff filter which is going to turn it into a high pass, so it's just letting the frequencies up in the high end, and let's play it. So that's what I want there. You'll see why I'm doing this in a minute. I'm basically going to recreate a whole bunch of sounds up in the high end of the spectrum. So we've got a bunch of samples we can chop up and cut and mix around. So what we'll do here is under the analog track we're going to insert a new audio track and we're going to resample it just like we did before. So we'll call this, what should we call this? We'll call it High B Resampled. So here's our High B Resampled. Let's send the master of this new analog track to High B Resampled, just like before. If we hit record here, go back to the start, hit record up here and play. So there's a nice audio loop of various little high high things that we can change. But I want to recreate this with some different sounds. So I'm going to click on high B resampled, and I'm going to duplicate it, Command D. So I've got a complete duplicate of the track, which means we've got an audio track ready to be resampled once again. So I can click on this and delete this. And let's go into the analog and let's change the wave shape to a square. Let's bring the audio filter down a little bit. It's quite cool. Let's give it a chorus. So chorus just basically kind of doubles the sound, gives it more presence, spreads it out slightly over the stereo widths. Just gives it a little bit of... We're creating really little subtle sounds here just to complement the bass. So that's all ready to record. See, analog is going to high resample B. Because we duplicated it, it's all ready to go again. So we go back to the start, hit record. Very cool. Again, I'm going to click this channel, I'm going to duplicate it, delete the sample out of it so we can muck around with the sound again. Let's put the filter onto a bandpass. And we'll give it an LFO, so we're giving it a low frequency oscillator. So we're attaching the cutoff point here. We can move it up and down with the mouse, but if we turn the amount on the LFO up, it's going to move it up and down for us. And how fast it moves it up and down is defined by this one here. So this is rate. So you can say, 10 hertz it's going to go up and down very, very, very fast, and down here it's going to go very, very, very slowly. So have a listen. And we've got phase on 180. This means that as the LFO sweeps the cutoff point up and down, it's going to go from the left and right. I don't want that to happen for this, so I'm going to bring the phase down to 0. That sounds good, so I'm going to resample it again. So this is armed. Let's click record. Awesome, that's another one. Let's duplicate it again. Let's create a few of these. Put the auto filter back on a high pass. Bring the LFO down. Let's get rid of the chorus. What can we add? Let's add a simple delay. Is quite fun. Okay, so this is a delay. And you've got a left and a right. So the left ear, or the left speaker, is being delayed at 4. The right is at 6. So that's why you get a kind of a stereo feeling. But this isn't what we're going to use the simple delay for. I'm going to link them here, which means this single left one now controls the entire delay, and it's converted into mono. So if I put this as at 3, at 1. That's all good if we want it to be beat synced, but I'm going to be strange here, and I'm going to turn the sync off, which means the delay isn't going to happen in time to the music. It's going to happen at milliseconds, which you define, which means you can get really, really short delays. Alright, and if we bring the feedback up, that's how long the delay takes to die. So it's on 0 at the moment, so it's only repeating the sound once. If we bring it up, let's bring it up quite far. You can get this. You get this. So if I bring this up quite. It's a cool sound. I'm going to add in a redux as well, just to give it a little bit of grunt. Put it on soft. That sounds good. Let's resample that. Cool. Let's duplicate it one more. Let's make a new one. Open it up. Don't want the redux. Don't want the simple delay. Keep the auto filter there. Let's add in some white noise. So white noise is a generator in the analog It's like an oscillator, but all it does is produce noise, like a TV untuned or a radio detuned, just a psh kind of sound. So if I turn the white noise on, if I turn the oscillator 1 off, you can just hear the white noise. Let's turn the oscillator 1 on. And we'll make it a saw. Let's bring the octave up. We can change the color of the white noise to say how high the white noise is. I want it there, but it's quite loud, so let's bring the volume of the white noise down, which is this one here. And just for the final thing, let's add on a filter delay and do that spatial trick that I talked about before. Remember, we turn the middle delay off, we turn the sync off of both the delays. Make sure that the filter of the delay is up high, because we're working up high on this one. So let's bring these right up high, and we're going to bring one of these down to, let's say, 5, and bring the initial volume down. We just want the volume of the left and right delay to be up. So that's really given it a lot of space. So let's resample that one. I actually really like that, so I'm going to do one more. Again, duplicate the track, delete it, open up the analog. Let's change this to a square. Let's give it a little bit of an LFO. And change the space a little bit more. This is so it doesn't clash with the other ones, so that each time one of these notes plays, it's coming from a different place. Cool, let's resample that. Awesome. We can delete this now, we don't need it. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new layers which we can cut up and complement the bass line. So let's, for start, select the 2 bars that we've recorded on all 6 and duplicate it 4 times. Dum, dum, dum. So we've got 8 bars. Actually, no, let's not do that. That's a silly idea. Let's find the sounds that we like most out of these samples here, and we'll put them into an impulse, a new little sampler. So I'm going to create a new audio track here, MIDI track here, and we'll call this high B impulse. We're going to load in an impulse. Remember, an impulse is a sampler with 8 slots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we can go through and we can listen to these clips that we've recorded, and we'll find the best little hit. I'm going to take that one there. I like that little one there. Don't ask me why. So I'll select that, and I'm going to slice it or cut it. Command or Control E. So it's created our own little sample for us. So now if we go up into the impulse, we've got our 8 here. We can just drag this newly cut sample down into the impulse. And if we solo the impulse, we now have a sample loaded up. Cool. We don't need this channel anymore. Let's move down to the next one. I think it's a good idea to use a long one, because we can actually shorten it in the impulse. So I'm going to use this one here, which is the long one. Control E, go to the impulse, drag it down, solo the impulse, so we have in. Cool, don't need this channel anymore. Let's find one on this channel. Let's use that one there. Control E, open up the impulse, drag it in. Make sure the impulse is soloed. Cool, can delete that. I like that first one there. Let's find another one. I like that one there. So we're going to use 2 from this one. Go back to the impulse. We'll drag that one into slot 4 and that one into slot 5. And we can delete that. Let's move on to this one. So I've got 2 left. I like that one. And we'll get a real short one. One of those. Oops. Control E. Open up the impulse. There. And there. It's pretty cool. Delete that. And this is our final one here. It's like a long note. E, delete, delete. Here's our impulse, and we'll drag this into the final 8 slots. And we can delete that. So that whole process, we now have an impulse loaded up with 8 hits. And these are going to be fun just to add in little glitchy sounds. So basically I'm going to insert a MIDI track into this impulse. Insert MIDI track. Oops, sorry, MIDI clip. I'm going to open up the piano roll, I'm going to watch, and I'm going to listen for a space in the bass line where one of those sounds could go. So that first area is too busy, that bass line is taking over. Maybe one after that snare. Here maybe. Maybe not. So this note here has a space on it. There's not actually much space in that bass line. So now what we can do, because we've resampled it, we can go in and we can actually delete things and make things shorter. Let's try that. We can even go in and we can delete various chunks of a note to give it more of a 16th note feeling. That's cool, hey, I like that. That note on the impulse, where was it? It's too long, so we simply change that by bringing the decay time down. So it's at 2 seconds, we can bring it down, let's say that. Let's delete the bass line here. So now we've got a space to put a note here. I'm just going to delete. I'm basically deleting the second half of each of these fast notes, which will make them a lot more stuttery. Might sound alright. Let's make it every second one, so we can drag these back to restore that second part that we deleted. Nah, it doesn't sound good. Let's try just the second 2. So I've created a gap here in the bass line, that means we can open it up. down. So I'm getting rid of the first bits of these notes. Got a low there. Let's delete these here. Get rid of these first notes and we could we'll shorten them. No, that doesn't sound good. Cool. And let's duplicate that across. Now we can change it again for the second phrase. Try and do it as quick as I can. See. Kind of like just deleting it when the snare plays. That note's too long. Make it too long, shorten it. Let's bring it up an octave by using the transpose. It's 12 semitones, see how it sounds. Bring the volume up. Volume up, that is up. Make that loud as well. Change these notes around a bit, see what we can get. That note's wrong. Cool. It's starting to sound pretty good, eh? Let's have another listen to that. Very cool. I'm going to leave this part here. Hang around for the next one.